Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. So in today's video, I've got a bit of a warning for silver stackers. Now, I remain bullish on the metals long term, but when we examine silver's chart, I'll show you why I believe there is some reason to be cautious right here at this point in time. And also, perhaps more importantly, we're going to examine the chart of the US dollar index, and I'll show you a very ominous indicator that suggests that the rally in the US dollar index is getting very long in the tooth here. But before we get to those charts, I wanted to start today's video off with a tweet written by Jesse Columba. Now, he's a precious metals analyst who I would suggest you follow. He puts out some great work over on X at x.com/thebubblebubble. And this is what Jesse had to write today. He said, since the election, there has been a radical vibe shift. Nobody seems to be interested in content related to gold, silver, sound money, and economic risks. I'm producing detailed reports and virtually nobody is clicking on them. I'm basically spinning my wheels. I guess we're, quote, saved and have erased hundreds of years worth of debt, right? I guess Trump magically erased the debts of Europe, Japan, and China too, /end sarcasm. I just wanted to share that because it's a barometer for investor sentiment right now. And I can confirm that I have seen a marked reduction in engagement following the election in terms of precious metals related content on all the various platforms I post on. Of course, if you want to help out with that, feel free to smash the like button. I always greatly appreciate all of you who like, subscribe, and comment. That does help juice up the algorithm and spread information regarding sound money, which I think is always a positive thing. But one thing that you can take away from this is that sentiment being so low, and it does appear to be at a bottom right now, is an indication that we are probably close to, if not at, a bottom in the precious metals. Because, of course, once everybody who is going to sell has sold and few people are buying, how can the price drop further? The inverse of that idea, of course, is that if sentiment is near a bottom, then there's a lot of investors on the sidelines who could potentially come into this market and bid prices higher. And I think that, especially when we examine the chart of the US dollar index today, you might agree that there is the potential for much higher gold and silver prices in the future. So let's get to it. Did you know SD Bullion is giving away a monster box of 2024 Tree of Life silver coins? Sign up today at sdbullion.com/sweepstakes. Okay, so while sentiment is clearly low in the precious metals, at least from my standpoint right now, it's important to keep in mind that the silver price remains in a bull market. I mean, silver is still up over 30% year over year. Now, have we seen a correction from the highs? 100% we have, absolutely. But you got to remember, silver is a volatile market. And for those of us who have the conviction that, we've got a lot of problems that haven't been resolved simply as a result of the election, these swings to the downside really are to our advantage because they allow us to accumulate more silver at lower prices. Speaking of problems that haven't been resolved, Jesse in his tweet there mentioned the U.S. national debt. Of course, this is a looming problem. Now we're at 36 trillion, 15 billion have been added on since we crossed that line. And next stop, 37 trillion. Now, will Trump be able to pull off some reversal of this crisis? Maybe, but I'm not really confident that it is within the power of any politician to solve the debt and deficit crisis that we are facing. I suspect that it's really just gone too far. And at this point, it's just a matter of trying to keep the whole house of cards from falling apart. And that if anything, a politician might be able to forestall a debt crisis, but avert one completely, I'm not so convinced. Now, I mentioned that there was a warning for stackers. I'm not going to keep you in suspense. Let's take a look at the chart of silver. Now, if you look at this chart, the way it's laid out here with this upward trend line, it really doesn't look too bad, right? Silver appears to be in a bull market. You've got higher highs, higher lows. Now, sure, there's a lot of volatility here, but that's nothing new for silver. But the reason I say I think it's important to be cautious here is the possibility of a B wave rally. Now, you might have seen mention of this on social media lately. I've seen a number of people commenting that this is a possibility. Now, let me outline what they are referring to. So if we're using Elliott wave theory, the idea is that markets move in sort of this orderly manner. And I'm going to draw the Elliott wave rally that we saw earlier this year from the lows in February up to a high in May. And the way this works is that you get a series of moves higher with these corrective waves in between. And you get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern. And then after you complete that pattern, you're set up for a correction, which takes the form of what they call an ABC correction. So from the top, you get a wave down, then you get a mid-correction rally, and then the final drop. which is the C wave. So you got A, B, and C. And then silver really has been following this pattern thus far this year. You can see that again in the rally that we had from May until recently in October, with another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern, an Elliott wave impulse wave higher. And that would mean that we would be set up for an ABC correction here. Now that has played out in part with this decline, and then we recently got the rally. Now the question is that just a B wave, or is it a resumption of silver's bull market higher? Will the recent rally fail? Do we need another correction before we get a move higher to new higher highs, above $35, above the highest prices that we've seen over the past decade, which just occurred in October? Now, if this is a B wave rally, the reason that we need to be cautious here is because the C wave could even take us below this trend line. Now, if it does occur, I will not view that as the end of the world for silver. I'm not going to run out there and sell my stack, and I don't necessarily even know that that means you shouldn't be stacking right now. For one thing, there's no guarantee that this is going to play out this way, especially when you look at the chart of the dollar, which we're going to look at in just a moment. And for stackers, it's not really about finding tops and bottoms. It's more about just accumulating hard assets and converting fiat currency into tangible assets outside of the financial system. So if I bought some silver today and took it into my possession, and then silver dropped, even below this trend line, let's say it drops to $28, $27, I wouldn't really be kicking myself for buying that silver at 30 or 31. I would probably just go out and buy more and dollar cost average down. But this is something to be aware of if you are playing the paper markets, if you're investing in mining stocks, if you're trading a derivative of the silver market like the SLV, especially if you're using leverage in the form of options. A move like this would really be something to be concerned about. And so that's why I think the current situation with the silver price and the silver chart, it just warrants some caution. And this is uncertainty. I'm not sure if silver is going to drop. I'm not sure if it's going to continue its move higher. And I know sometimes people don't really like uncertainty or answers like that, but that's part of forecasting, is that sometimes you can just say, I'm not sure. There's no clear signal here. And we just need to be patient and wait for this situation to resolve itself. And eventually, at some point, the picture will become more clear. Now, if you want an idea of something that could make the situation much more clear for the future of the precious metals, we just need to take a look at the chart of the US dollar index. The DXY has been on a real rip higher since September. Now, it kind of petered out here in late October when we started to see a bit of a correction in the dollar. But then following the election, the dollar just absolutely ripped higher. And I think that in part this reflects optimism about the economy, perhaps some irrational exuberance surrounding the dollar and its role in the global economy. And there's one signal here that we really need to be paying attention to from a technical standpoint. And to illustrate that, I am going to draw a trend line here, which connects the dollar index's highs. So you can see there is an upward sloping trend line here, indicating that the dollar is moving higher. Now it is butting up against a zone of significant resistance right now. You can see it actually was in the green today, but fell short of breaching that resistance. And I suspect that this is going to be the point that the dollar turns around. Now, let me tell you why. When we examine the relative strength index, that's this purple line down here, which gives you an indication of how overbought or oversold an asset can be, you're going to notice something when I connect the highs on the RSI, which correspond to peaks in the dollar index. And that is that the trend line connecting these points does not move higher the way that the trend line that connects the dollar indexes points to. Now, this is known as a divergence between the technical indicator, the RSI, and the asset, the US dollar index. And to illustrate what this divergence could mean, I've pulled up this website here, lakshmishri.com, who has a tutorial on identifying RSI divergences. And I've skipped ahead to the relevant portion here. But you can see to identify it, you want to connect the highs of an asset, as we did with the DXY, and then also connect the highs in the relative strength index, as we did. And this is identified as a divergence. They say to confirm a bearish RSI divergence, check if the trend line on the price chart is moving upward, meaning higher highs, while the trend line on the RSI is moving downward, lower highs. This signals that buying momentum is weakening, and a potential downtrend could be on the horizon. And for that reason, combined with the fact that the DXY is butting up against this zone of resistance, and of course the inexorable expansion of debts and deficits, which will ultimately be very bearish for the dollar because all of this debt will have to be monetized. It can only be paid off in a devalued currency. I suspect that we may be in the near future for a sharp drop in the dollar index, and that would likely correspond to a major rally in the precious metals. So again, while I do believe there is reason to be cautious here when we look at the chart of silver, if we do see that correction in the dollar, I think it will eliminate the possibility of this C-wave drop in the silver price, and it will override any of this Elliott wave theory forecasting, and we will simply see the silver price rip higher. Now, the dollar isn't necessarily going to crash tomorrow. It could trend sideways for a while here. It may indicate that the rally simply is completed and the dollar will trend sideways. Perhaps we will see further correction in the metals, but in the medium to the long term, I think that the writing is on the wall for the dollar here, and we are likely to see much higher prices for the metals. So that's why I'm still stacking regardless of whether or not this is a B wave or a C wave in the silver price. I'm not too concerned, but I do want to put this warning out there because I know a lot of times when investors, stackers, whatever, you might be new to this, you might see these volatile moves in silver and become rather disillusioned, but getting an idea of the big picture of what is occurring here and the fact that, silver remains in a bull market and the prospects for the dollar are not great moving forward, it can give you more confidence when you're picking up some precious metals. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is just my opinion, my analysis. Use it for what it is worth. I hope you got something out of this. If you'd like to see some more videos about gold, silver, and the future of the US dollar, make sure you check out the video that is popping up on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking. Smart Silver Stacker out.